Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge, not knowing how to take the next step? Have you ever wondered how some people manage to stay strong and steady, even when everything around them seems to be falling apart? Well, I've got some powerful news for you. The key to being resilient and strong through life's challenges lies in an ancient secret, and this secret doesn't come from magic formulas or complicated strategies. No, it comes from a man who truly understood what it meant to suffer and left us with an unmatched example of strength, faith, and endurance. Jesus, the Son of God, revealed a deep truth about how to overcome any storm. True strength doesn't come from our own human abilities, but from trust in God, constant prayer, faith in hard times, forgiveness, and accepting His will. He didn't just teach us to endure, He showed us how to turn suffering into strength. And the best part is, to tap into this strength, all you need to do is follow the principles He lived and shared with us. Now imagine for a moment that you had access to this inner power. What would change in your life if you knew that no matter what happens, you have the strength to overcome any obstacle? Let's explore together this life secret that Jesus shared with all of us. Life often challenges us in unexpected ways. But how do we find strength in the face of adversity? Jesus, through His teachings, shows us how to be resilient and strong, even when circumstances seem to knock us down. He taught us that true strength doesn't come from physical endurance, but from trust in God, unwavering faith, and the ability to stay calm in the midst of chaos. If we look at the toughest moments in life, we see that it is through adversity that we find our true strength. Resilience, as Jesus teaches us, isn't just about enduring life's blows. It's the ability to grow and become stronger through them. This is evident in how He faced trials. Each challenge was an opportunity for Him to show His inner strength, a strength that was sustained by His faith in God. It wasn't a strength forced upon His body or mind, but one that came from an unshakable divine source. As He showed us, even on the cross with all the pain and humiliation, He kept His faith and mission intact. Now, imagine someone facing financial struggles, relationship issues, or even personal losses. Often, what's lacking is the understanding that just like Jesus, these difficulties are actually an opportunity to strengthen the spirit. True resilience comes from not letting circumstances define who we are, but by keeping our identity firm, even when everything around us is falling apart. For example, you could view a hardship as a chance to learn, just as Jesus did in every moment of His life. A simple but powerful example: imagine someone going through a personal crisis. This person could find inspiration in Jesus facing the cross. He didn't turn away from His mission. He didn't deny His faith. Similarly, in times of crisis, we can pray for strength, ask for help, and move forward with courage. If you're going through tough times, pause and reflect. How can I grow through this? How can I use this situation to strengthen myself? The strength that Jesus exemplifies is also the strength of forgiveness and patience. He teaches us that resilience involves knowing how to forgive and not letting hurt destroy us. For Jesus, forgiveness wasn't just an act of kindness, but a way of liberation. He knew that by forgiving, He not only healed others, but also healed Himself from the inside out. This lesson is incredibly valuable. Instead of holding on to bitterness, true strength lies in letting go and moving forward, stronger than before. In moments of weakness, Jesus shows us that true strength lies in recognizing our limitations and still moving forward. Resilience isn't about being invincible, but about knowing that no matter how tough things get, we can always take one more step. The secret is in understanding that, no matter how fragile we may feel, strength doesn't come from us but from God's grace. The Apostle Paul reminds us of this in his letters when he says, "When I am weak, then I am strong." 2 Corinthians 12:10. Just like Jesus, who in moments of great suffering turned to God in prayer, we too should seek strength through prayer. When physical and emotional exhaustion feel unbearable, it's in prayer and our connection with God that we find the strength to carry on. Prayer becomes a powerful remedy that strengthens the soul and revives the body. Finally, as we reflect on the resilience and strength that Jesus taught us, it's important to remember that this strength is not something we gain in a single moment, but rather a continuous process. Every day, we must seek to strengthen our faith, renew our strength, and recognize that, just like him, we can face adversity with courage and confidence. Therefore, resilience is a daily practice, built step by step, always with faith in God as our foundation. Trusting in God is the foundation for a life of true strength and resilience. Jesus, through his teachings and actions, showed us that even in the most challenging situations, fully trusting in God is the key to overcoming any obstacle. One of the most significant moments when Jesus demonstrated this trust was during his temptation in the desert, as recorded in Matthew 4:1-4. When the devil challenged him, offering all the power and riches of the world, Jesus responded firmly, "Man shall not live by bread alone." He knew that true strength comes from God, not from the fleeting temptations of this world. This example teaches us something profound. Trusting in God means knowing that, no matter how difficult the situations may be, he always has a greater purpose for our lives. Even in his humanity, Jesus did not give in to temptation because he understood that God's plan for him was far more important than any temporary reward. This trust was the strength that sustained him. When we face our own temptations and challenges, we can remember that just like Jesus, we must resist and trust that God has the best for us, even when immediate solutions seem enticing. Trusting in God also teaches us not to rely solely on our own strength or human abilities. When we're faced with a problem, it's natural to want to solve it on our own, with our own resources. However, trusting in God invites us to rest in his wisdom and direction. For instance, when a challenge at work or in a relationship feels unbearable, we can choose to act with faith, surrendering the situation to God and seeking the peace that comes from that trust. Praying and asking for direction in times of crisis is a way of recognizing that no matter how strong we may be, we need divine guidance. But how do we practice trust in God in our daily lives? Start with small situations. When you face a tough day, make an important decision, or even feel like you're losing control, take a moment to pause and surrender everything to God. It doesn't have to be a long or complex prayer, but simply saying, "God, I trust you," can make all the difference. This helps us remember that he is in control even when we can't see the immediate solution. Trusting in God also teaches us to be patient. When Jesus was tempted in the desert, he didn't respond immediately with a visible victory, but trusted in God's timing and plan. Similarly, in our lives, we often don't see answers right away. Trusting in God helps us wait patiently, knowing that in his perfect timing he will provide the answers we need. Instead of acting impulsively or in desperation, we can trust that he is working on our behalf, even when things aren't clear. Another practical example of trusting in God can be seen in the story of David and Goliath. David, a young shepherd, didn't trust in his own strength or ability to defeat the giant, but in God's power. He said to Goliath, "You come at me with sword and spear, but I come at you in the name of the Lord Almighty." 1 Samuel 17:45. This teaches us that, often, the challenges we face may seem like giants, but with God, we are more than capable of overcoming them. Thus, trusting in God is also a way of freeing ourselves from anxiety. When we surrender our worries to him, we stop carrying the burden of trying to control everything. This gives us a peace that surpasses all understanding, as Philippians 4:6-7 teaches us. Trusting in God allows us to rest, knowing that he is in control and that no matter what happens, he is with us. Therefore, trust in God is not just a theoretical belief, but a daily practice. It strengthens us in adversity and prepares us to face challenges with courage and faith. Now that we understand how to trust in God, let's explore the next secret: praying constantly. Let's see how prayer can be a powerful tool for our strength and resilience. Prayer is one of the most powerful practices for cultivating strength and resilience, especially in times of adversity. Jesus gave us a clear example of how prayer can be an inexhaustible source of renewal and strength. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when he knew he was about to face the greatest pain and suffering of his life, he withdrew to pray. This moment, described in Matthew 26:36-46, teaches us that prayer is the key to renewing the spirit. Even as the Son of God, Jesus knew he needed to connect with the Father to find strength and move forward. Constant prayer, therefore, is more than just asking for something. It is a way to maintain our connection with God, especially during difficult times. When we pray, we give our burdens to Him while allowing Him to strengthen us in return. For example, if you're facing a challenge at work or in a relationship, taking a moment to pray can be the perfect time to calm your mind and seek divine wisdom. Prayer doesn't immediately fix the problems, but it spiritually prepares us to deal with them in a more peaceful and confident way. In his moments of prayer, Jesus not only asked God for strength, but also sought to align his will with God's. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he prayed, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Matthew 26:39. This teaches us that prayer isn't just about asking for something, but also about aligning ourselves with God's greater plan, accepting his will even when we don't fully understand it. In our lives, when we pray, we can learn to surrender our desires to the Father and trust that he knows what's best for us. Practicing constant prayer is an invitation to step out of our routine and seek moments of quiet with God. It doesn't require hours of prayer, but rather sincere moments throughout the day, especially when we feel the need for a pause. It might be when we wake up, before meals, or even while waiting in traffic. What matters most is consistency and the intention behind the prayer. For instance, if you find yourself frustrated, you can simply say, "Lord, help me handle this," allowing God to bring the peace you need. Constant prayer also helps us recognize God's presence in every aspect of our lives, not just in times of crisis. When we establish a daily practice of prayer, we create a direct line of communication with God. This allows us to perceive his guidance in all areas of our life, in professional decisions, in raising children, or in how we interact with others. Constant prayer strengthens our ability to act in line with his will, bringing peace and clarity. It's important to remember that often answers to prayer don't come immediately. Jesus himself experienced the silence of God in his moments of prayer. However, he continued praying, trusting that the answer would come at the right time. This example teaches us to have patience in prayer, knowing that God works in mysterious ways and that his answer might be different from what we expect. Instead of giving up, we must persist, just as Jesus did, trusting that God will guide us in the best way. Constant prayer also offers us a way to renew our inner strength. Throughout the days, worries and stress can emotionally drain us. The practice of praying regularly helps us find a refreshing source of strength. Just as Jesus withdrew to pray and renew himself, we too must seek those moments of spiritual refuge. Instead of letting anxiety or fear consume us, prayer allows us to recharge our emotional and spiritual energy. Constant prayer, then, is a transformative practice that helps us face life with greater confidence and peace. It strengthens us, guides us, and draws us closer to God, making us more resilient in the face of difficulties. Now that we've seen how constant prayer can strengthen us, let's explore the next secret: serving others, which is also a powerful source of strength. Let's see how this can impact our resilience. Jesus taught us that serving others is one of the most powerful sources of strength and resilience. He showed us, through his actions, that true greatness comes from service and humility. A striking example of this was when he washed his disciples' feet, as described in John 13:1-17. In an act of extreme humility, Jesus, the Master, knelt down and washed the feet of his followers, a task typically reserved for servants. He taught us that serving others is not just a task, but a way to express God's love and compassion in a tangible way. When we make ourselves available to serve, we not only help others, but we also strengthen ourselves spiritually. Through service, we set aside our ego and personal needs, focusing on the needs of others. This kind of action gives us a sense of purpose and satisfaction that no personal achievement can provide. If you've ever dedicated yourself to helping someone without expecting anything in return, you know how transformative this experience can be, both for the one receiving help and for the one offering it. Serving others is also a way to combat self-sufficiency and arrogance. In the world we live in, we often hear that we should be independent and always pursue personal success. However, Jesus teaches us that true strength lies in serving, being humble, and putting others first. This doesn't mean erasing ourselves, but rather recognizing that there is power in helping others. When we dedicate time and effort to help those around us, we are enriched by the experience, and our lives take on a deeper meaning. A practical example of how to serve others in our daily lives can be seen in small acts of generosity. This can be as simple as helping a co-worker with a difficult task, listening to a friend going through a tough time, or even assisting someone in your neighborhood. We don't need to wait for grand opportunities to serve. Often the best chances are in the small actions of daily life. Every time we serve, whether through words or actions, our inner strength grows, and we become more resilient. Serving others also teaches us to be more compassionate and develop empathy. Jesus didn't serve others because it was convenient or because he would gain something in return. He did it because he loved people and wanted to demonstrate God's love through his actions. Serving others helps us step out of our comfort zone and put ourselves in the other person's shoes. It strengthens our relationships and makes us more sensitive to the struggles others face, increasing our own ability to endure hardships. Serving others is also a reminder that we are not alone in this journey. When we help someone, we become part of a collective movement of love and compassion that unites people. This creates a bond that strengthens us all. Often, when we're dealing with our own struggles, by extending a hand to someone else, we are surprised by the strength we find in serving. This shows that by helping others carry their burdens, somehow our own challenges feel lighter. The practice of serving others also teaches us to be more resilient by focusing on the collective well-being rather than fixating on our own difficulties. Through service, we are reminded that our lives have more meaning when they positively impact the world around us. True strength doesn't come from seeking only our own happiness or success, but from contributing to the well-being of others. As Jesus showed us, greatness is in giving, not in receiving. Therefore, serving others is a way to exercise our strength and resilience, helping us grow spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. By living for the well-being of others, we also strengthen ourselves and become better prepared to face life's challenges. Now that we've seen the power of service, let's explore how faith in difficult times can help us overcome life's greatest challenges. Faith in God is an inexhaustible source of strength, especially in times of challenge and difficulty. Jesus taught us that, amidst the storms of life, faith is the key to overcoming any adversity. A clear example of this can be found in the passage where he calms the storm on the sea, as told in Matthew 8:23-27. When the disciples, terrified by the power of the wind and waves, feared for their lives, Jesus said, "Why are you afraid, you of little faith?" And immediately the storm calmed. This act of faith in God is a powerful reminder that when we fully trust in God, we can face any storm, whether literal or figurative. Faith in difficult moments is the foundation that keeps us steady, even when circumstances tell us otherwise. The storm on the sea was something the disciples could not control, but by trusting in Jesus, they experienced the peace he brought. Similarly, in our lives, there are times when we feel helpless in situations we cannot control. However, faith in God gives us the assurance that, even in the most chaotic situations, He is in control and will guide us along the best path. In times of difficulty such as illness, financial problems, or emotional crises, we are often tempted to despair and lose hope. But just like the disciples, we need to remember that faith in God empowers us to face even the greatest challenges with courage and confidence. When the woman with the issue of blood touched Jesus' garments and was healed, Mark 5:25-34, she had no doubts that faith in Jesus would heal her. This teaches us that no matter how desperate the situation seems, faith in God can bring healing and solutions to what once appeared impossible. True faith, as exemplified by Jesus, does not depend on visible circumstances, but on unwavering trust in God. In our daily lives, it's natural that when things are going well, our faith is strong. However, it is in difficult times that our faith is tested and strengthened. Jesus calls us to trust in God even when we cannot see the solution, knowing that He has a greater purpose for every situation. Faith gives us a vision beyond what we can see with our human eyes, reminding us that even in the darkness, God is working on our behalf. For example, when we face a problem at work, instead of panicking, we can look at the situation with faith. Faith helps us realize that no matter how complicated the challenge may seem, God has a solution that we might not yet see. As Jesus taught us, faith is not about avoiding the storm, but about trusting that, with God by our side, we can navigate any stormy sea. Faith teaches us to wait with patience and trust, knowing that the answer will come in God's timing. Faith also teaches us to act with courage, even when the path ahead is uncertain. When the disciples were in the boat, fearing for their lives, Jesus did not reprimand them for being afraid, but for their lack of faith. He challenged them to believe, even when the wind and waves were strong. Similarly, our faith challenges us to act, even when fear tries to paralyze us. When we trust in God, He gives us the courage to take the next step, even if we don't know exactly where it will lead. Thus, faith teaches us to see beyond immediate difficulties and trust in the divine plan for our lives. It gives us a new perspective, one of peace, confidence, and hope, regardless of the circumstances. Just as Jesus calmed the storm, He can bring peace and serenity to our hearts, even in the most difficult times. With faith, we can face any challenge with confidence, knowing that God is in control and will guide us to victory. Now that we have strengthened our faith, let's explore the power of forgiveness and how it is a fundamental pillar for our spiritual and emotional resilience. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful and transformative teachings of Jesus. In a world where hurts and resentments are often nurtured, the ability to forgive from the heart is a source of spiritual strength that brings peace and healing both to the one who forgives and to the one being forgiven. Jesus, through His own life, gave us a clear example of this. When He was on the cross about to die, He forgave those who had tortured and crucified Him, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. This profound act of forgiveness was not only an act of mercy, but also a demonstration of inner strength and unconditional love. True forgiveness, as taught by Jesus, is not just a superficial action or a forced excuse, but a deep act of liberation. When we forgive from the heart, we are not only releasing others, but also releasing ourselves. It allows us to let go of the emotional burden we carry, which often traps us in resentment. Instead of focusing on the pain someone caused, forgiveness invites us to focus on the peace we gain by letting go of those feelings. This is true resilience, the ability to transform pain into something that strengthens us. Forgiving, however, is not easy. Our human hearts often resist it, especially when the pain is deep. But Jesus teaches us that forgiveness is not a favor we do for others, it is a gift we give ourselves. He showed us that by forgiving, we not only overcome the hurt, but we also become stronger. A practical example of this is when we carry a burden of anger or resentment. It can eat away at our heart and spirit, weakening our ability to act with peace and love. By forgiving, we set that burden aside, allowing our energy to focus on positive things, thus strengthening our inner resilience. Forgiving from the heart also teaches us true humility. Jesus, being sinless, didn't need to forgive, but He did so to teach us to walk the same path. When we forgive someone, we are choosing to act with humility and compassion, acknowledging that we all make mistakes and that we all need forgiveness, including ourselves. When we learn to forgive, our own faith is strengthened. It is not a sign of weakness, but of spiritual strength, because it allows us to act according to divine principles, overcoming our emotions and choosing the path of peace. Sometimes forgiveness may mean letting go of a personal sense of justice. This doesn't mean we need to accept the wrong done or ignore what happened, but it means choosing peace and healing over living in a cycle of anger and hurt. Jesus in His life did not ignore injustice, but He chose to forgive, offering others a chance to repent and change. This is a great example of inner strength, the ability not to be controlled by circumstances, but to act with love and mercy, even when everything seems unfair. A practical example of forgiveness can be found in personal, family, or professional relationships. If someone has hurt you deeply, forgiveness is not about forgetting or minimizing what happened, but about releasing the power that the pain has over you. By doing so, you create space for healing and consequently for more emotional strength. Think about the last time you felt anger or hurt. How did that feeling impact your life? Now, imagine if you had released it and chosen to forgive. How would you feel? Forgiveness gives us the freedom to move forward with more lightness. Forgiveness is also a way to maintain our integrity and inner peace. Jesus teaches us that by forgiving, we are freed from the cycle of negativity. There is nothing more empowering than choosing to forgive someone who has hurt us, because it makes us stronger than any resentment. Instead of being enslaved by pain, forgiveness frees us to live with more joy and hope. When we forgive, we remember that we are called to love and not to hold grudges, and this strengthens our resilience. Therefore, heartfelt forgiveness is one of the greatest exercises of spiritual strength we can practice. By following Jesus' example, who forgave while being crucified, we are called to release our hearts, allowing God's peace to fill the void of hurt and anger. Now that we understand the power of forgiveness, let's explore how accepting God's will helps us have even deeper resilience in difficult times. Accepting God's will, especially in difficult times, is one of the most challenging yet liberating practices we can learn. Jesus, in his deepest example of submission to the Father, taught us that accepting God's will, even when we don't fully understand it, is the key to finding peace and inner strength. One of the most emblematic moments of this lesson was his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, where, knowing the pain he would face, he prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. This moment of complete surrender is an example of how we should submit to God's will, trusting that no matter how difficult it may be, God's plan is always the best for us. Accepting God's will does not mean resignation or passivity in the face of difficulties, but rather an attitude of faith and trust. Often we are tempted to question or resist what God allows in our lives, especially when the pain or suffering seems unbearable. However, as Jesus taught us, it is in accepting God's will that we find true peace. It's not about understanding everything, but trusting that God knows what is best for us, even when it leads us down unknown or painful paths. In our daily lives, this can manifest in different ways. For example, when we lose something or someone, we often question why it happened. Accepting God's will in that moment means trusting that He has a purpose for that loss, and that somehow He will use this situation to shape and strengthen us. It's not about ignoring the pain or emotions, but recognizing that no matter how hard it is, God is in control and is working for our good, even in the most challenging situations. Accepting God's will also involves learning to deal with things we cannot change. Jesus did not ask for his suffering to be removed, but asked God to give him the strength to face it. Many times in our lives, we encounter situations we cannot control, such as illness, financial struggles, or even the death of a loved one. In those moments, accepting God's will does not mean giving up on fighting, but trusting that He is with us, giving us the strength we need to get through the storm. Acceptance brings a sense of relief, because it frees us from the anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable. A practical example of how accepting God's will can be applied is when we face unexpected situations, like losing a job or dealing with a health crisis. Instead of fighting against the situation and sinking into frustration, we can turn to prayer and ask God to help us understand His will in that moment. Accepting His will gives us the confidence that, even in the midst of pain, He has something better for us and is working on our behalf, even when we cannot see the solution right away. It's important to remember that accepting God's will does not mean we cannot express our feelings or fight for change. Jesus in His prayer expressed His pain, but in the end, He surrendered to the Father, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." This teaches us that we can be transparent with God, sharing our struggles, but at the same time we must trust that He knows what is best for us. Accepting God's will is an act of trust and surrender, not passivity. As we accept God's will, we also learn to detach from control. Often suffering comes when we try to control every area of our lives, and by surrendering to God, we discover that true peace lies in trusting that He has control. Acceptance frees us from anxiety and strengthens us, because we know that by following God's path, we are in the best possible place. Therefore, accepting God's will is an act of deep faith. It's not easy, but it's a practice that makes us more resilient, stronger, and more aligned with the divine purpose. By learning to accept God's will, even in the most challenging times, we find a peace that surpasses all understanding, and our faith is strengthened in ways we never imagined. Now, with this understanding of accepting God's will, we can see how this practice shapes our daily lives and our ability to face any difficulty. The Bible is filled with stories that powerfully illustrate the principles taught by Jesus about strength and resilience. One striking example is the story of David and Goliath found in 1 Samuel 17:45. David, a simple shepherd, faced the giant Goliath, an unbeatable warrior in the eyes of everyone. But David didn't trust in his physical strength or fighting ability. He trusted in God. With faith, he declared, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." And with just a stone, he defeated the giant. This story teaches us that no matter how great the obstacle, true strength comes from our trust in God, not from our own abilities. What makes the story of David even more powerful is that he wasn't chosen for his strength or skills. He was chosen for his unwavering faith in God. This teaches us that often society values physical strength, skills, and material resources, but true strength comes from trusting in God. In our own deserts or giants, we must trust that God is with us, empowering us to do what to the world's eyes seems impossible. Another biblical example that demonstrates the power of faith and trust in God, even in the most challenging circumstances, is the story of Job. Job was a righteous man, but he suffered immeasurable losses. He lost his wealth, his children, and his health. In Job 1:21 he declared, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In the midst of so much pain, Job did not lose his faith. His patience and trust in God are a clear example of resilience. He teaches us that even when everything seems lost, we can stand firm and trust that God has a greater purpose for our lives. The story of Job also shows us that resilience does not come from a life without difficulties, but from how we deal with them. He didn't deny the pain, but he didn't allow it to separate him from his faith in God. He teaches us that true spiritual strength comes when we can maintain our trust in God, even when circumstances are unfavorable. Job's suffering was great, but his faith kept him firm. This reminds us that no matter how difficult situations may be, faith gives us the strength to keep going. These examples are not just ancient stories, but powerful lessons we can apply in our daily lives. When we face difficulties, we can look to David and Job and see that by trusting in God, we can overcome any obstacle. Faith empowers us to face the giants of life with courage and confidence, just as David did. And like Job, we can endure adversity without losing our trust in God, knowing that He has a plan for our lives, even if we cannot see the immediate result. In our daily lives, we can apply these examples in many ways. When we encounter situations that seem impossible, such as a challenge at work or a broken relationship, we can remember David's trust and Job's patience. Instead of despairing or trying to solve everything with our own strength, we can trust in God and surrender the situation to Him, knowing that He will give us wisdom and strength to move forward. This doesn't mean the difficulties will disappear immediately, but it gives us the confidence that with God, we can overcome any challenge. The story of David teaches us the courage to face giants with the confidence that God is with us. The story of Job teaches us patience and faith to endure times of suffering, knowing that God always has a greater purpose. These examples help us understand that with faith, we can be truly resilient and strong, no matter the circumstances we face. The teachings of Jesus are not just spiritual principles to be studied, but concrete practices that we can apply in our daily lives. When He spoke about having faith in difficult times, forgiving from the heart and trusting in God, He was showing us a practical way to handle life's challenges. Applying these teachings can completely transform the way we face daily struggles and help us live more resiliently. A clear example of how to apply faith in daily life is when we face difficult decisions, whether at work, in relationships, or in our personal lives. Instead of trying to solve everything on our own, we can learn to pray and surrender the situation to God, as Jesus taught us. This doesn't mean expecting solutions to fall from the sky, but by praying and trusting God, we begin to act with the assurance that He is guiding us. For example, when a job opportunity arises, instead of rushing to make a decision out of fear or anxiety, we can pray for wisdom seeking God's direction to make the right choice. Another way to apply Jesus' teachings is by practicing heartfelt forgiveness. Many times we hold on to resentments that consume us and prevent us from living in peace. Jesus showed us that forgiveness is not only for others, but also for ourselves. When we forgive, we release the emotional burden we carry, allowing our soul to heal. In our daily lives, this can manifest in everyday situations, such as when someone hurts or disappoints us. Instead of holding on to grudges, we can choose to forgive, thereby reclaiming our inner peace. Forgiveness is not easy, but it's a choice that strengthens us because, by releasing others, we also release ourselves. The practice of constant prayer is also a powerful way to apply Jesus' teachings in our lives. We don't have to wait for moments of crisis to pray. We can make prayer a daily habit, starting the day with a moment of connection with God. This prepares us spiritually to face whatever challenges come our way. If you're struggling to maintain focus or peace at work, a brief prayer of surrender and trust might be just what you need to gain clarity and act with wisdom. This practice helps us stay calm and confident, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Applying the principles of trusting in God can also be a daily practice. Instead of trying to control every situation, we can learn to trust God, especially when things seem out of control. For example, when facing a financial problem, we can trust that God will provide what we need, but also look for practical solutions, such as adjusting our budget or seeking additional sources of income. Trusting in God gives us peace to act with wisdom and patience as we wait for the solutions He has for us. When we apply these teachings in our daily lives, we begin to see situations differently. Challenges are no longer just problems to be solved, but opportunities to grow and strengthen our faith. For instance, if you're dealing with a difficult relationship, instead of trying to solve everything with your own strength, you can choose to apply faith, forgiveness, and prayer. This can transform the situation, allowing you to approach the person with more understanding and compassion, following Jesus' example. The acceptance of God's will is also crucial for our daily application. Often we encounter situations we don't understand or that seem unfair. Jesus teaches us that by accepting God's will, we find peace, even when things don't go as we expect. In our daily lives, we can apply this acceptance when we face losses, changes, or disappointments. Instead of resisting what we cannot change, we can trust that God is in control and that He has a greater purpose for our lives, even if we can't see the bigger picture. The application of these teachings makes us more resilient, stronger, and better able to face life's difficulties with inner peace. When we pray, trust, forgive, and accept God's will, we align ourselves with His purpose and discover strengths we didn't know we had. These principles help us transform the way we deal with adversity and prepare us to face any challenge. Finally, applying Jesus' teachings in our daily lives is not something that happens all at once. It's a continuous process of learning, practicing, and transforming. Each day is a new opportunity to live according to these principles, and the more we practice them, the stronger we become. True strength and resilience come from living in accordance with the teachings Jesus left us, and this can profoundly change the way we face life's challenges. Now that we've explored the powerful secrets Jesus taught us about how to be resilient and strong, it's time to put these lessons into practice. As we've seen, true strength doesn't come from our own abilities or human effort, but from our trust in God, constant prayer, unwavering faith, forgiveness, and acceptance of His divine will. These principles provide us with the tools to face any storm that comes our way, turning difficulties into opportunities for spiritual growth. The first step is to pray constantly. Prayer is not just a response to adversity, but a way to stay connected with God, receiving His direction and strength for our everyday lives. Start now by making prayer a daily practice, handing over your concerns, and trusting that God is in control of everything. Second, trust in God. In times of uncertainty, when challenges seem insurmountable, remember that He has the power to transform any situation. No matter how big the challenge, with God by our side, nothing is impossible. Trusting in God allows us to live with peace and courage, knowing that He has a plan for our lives, even when we cannot see the immediate solution. Forgiveness is another essential step toward freedom and strength. When we forgive, we not only free others, but also ourselves. Forgiveness heals our hearts and strengthens our souls. Instead of holding on to grudges, choose forgiveness and experience the peace it brings. Finally, accepting God's will is an invitation to trust that even when things don't happen the way we expect, He knows what is best for us. Accepting God's will brings a deep peace because we know that He is in control and that everything has a divine purpose. Now, I challenge you, apply these teachings today. Start praying, trusting in God, forgiving and accepting His will in your life. Share this message with someone who needs to hear these words and strengthen the collective faith. Together, we can face any challenge with the strength that comes from God. If you enjoyed this video and feel this message can help more people, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue learning how to live a stronger, faith-filled life. Let's walk together on this journey of strength and resilience, always with God by our side.